stop coughing. Hello, it is Steph. Welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you are new to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be exposing my old church youth group. So from the summer that I finished 5th grade until the end of my sophomore year, I used to go to this church youth group every Sunday night and sometimes on Wednesday nights. My parents never forced me to go or anything. It was always my choice, but I always chose to go because I had friends. But even though I had friends there's a lot of stuff that went on that I just didn't like and didn't agree with. And so I'm going to be talking about all that right now, which kind of leads up to why I left. I stopped going once I no longer had friends who were going there too, but obviously taking everything else into account is why it wasn't worth it for me to stay on my own. First thing, I just did not like how rude some of the kids were there. There was a lot of cliques, and you could just tell when you came in that people were judging you. So when I had first started going, like one of my first times there was this girl, and she was so mean all the time. She's actually really nice now. I don't talk to her or anything, but I don't have a problem with her anymore. It's just things were a little crazy when we first got in there. And she pushed my Bible in the mud, and I had only had this Bible for like a few months, so it looked new. So that really upset me that happened. I still have that Bible and it still has like dirt marks on it, so but that's all resolved and forgiven. But that's just one of the things that had happened. But I guess overall, except for my friends, I kind of struggled to fit in there. And even some of the friends I had were part of these like bigger cliques and groups. So it was awkward to hang out with them and these other people at the same time. The reason why I couldn't be involved in like these friend groups is simply because I didn't want to be. I mean, my parents went to the church every Sunday and they volunteered sometimes, but they weren't there all the time like some of these other people were. I mean, there's nothing wrong with anything that their parents were doing. It was just because they saw each other more often. That's probably why they formed a connection more. I don't know. But honestly, it really goes beyond the kids in the situation. One of the biggest issues I had was the youth leaders there. I always felt like I was being judged by them. And some of them were just so pushy and annoying. Like, I don't want to be mean, but they're flat out annoying. Before my friends used to arrive, because I was always early for some reason, or they were late, I don't know. I would actually go hide in the bathroom so nobody would talk to me. And then I would text my friends and be like, hey, are you here yet? Because obviously I didn't want to be stuck out in the middle of that. And personally, I just thought a bunch of the youth leaders there were immature and they acted like children and they would get mad at us for things. And I was like, wait, you just did this and now you're gonna yell at us for this. And some of the youth leaders there I just felt like were too young. I just remember there were seniors, you know, they would graduate in May, June, around that time, and then by the fall they were a youth leader. So it's like they never really got to stop going to youth group, therefore they just kept acting like youth group kids. There was one, I remember, who I loved. Like, you wouldn't have thought that she was in the youth group only a few months before if you hadn't met her beforehand. What am I saying? There was one person who I really liked who became a youth leader fast, but everybody else I kind of had issues about. And going into my next portion, I'm going to be talking about sort of like a problem that I had with one of them. So one night after youth group was over, they're like, hey, we are looking for people to join the worship team. We need people in the band. We need people in the back, like doing like the sound and the slides and all that stuff. So when I heard this, I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do that. I want to be in the back on the computers. So I signed up for that. I was 13 years old at the time. Was I 13? Yeah, I was in 7th grade and I decided to start doing that. So at first when I started doing that, they kept telling us to get there at a certain time, which was earlier, so we could help set up. So that's what I did. But then after a few times, they're like, oh, you don't need to come this early anymore. Just come at the time that you always do and come back here when we're ready to start. They 100% said that because I remember asking about it a few times. I also had friends who were doing this too, and they were told the same things as me, and they were showing up at the same time as me, so it wasn't like only I was getting confused, it was everybody else too. So yeah, that happened. It was kind of weird, but I actually had a lot of fun doing it for like the first year, and then after that I just wanted to be with my friends, and then it got kind of annoying. Another reason why I didn't just like say, hey, I want to be done, or like, I just can't do this, I have too much going on, like, it's because of the way they always pushed you. They're like, you need to serve, you need to do this for Jesus, and like, they wouldn't be like, oh, you come in to do this at this time. They'd be like, you serve at this time. So I didn't want to seem like a bad person, because I wanted to stop doing it. So that's why I like just try to push through it. So then after about a year doing that, I kept getting scheduled really inconsistently. I think my schedule was supposed to be like twice a month. It would be like once every few months. And then it just started to get annoying, and I hated going because I just wanted to be with my friends and not back there. Another thing that was hard for me is that I didn't know all of the songs. So sometimes I would click on the wrong slide because I didn't know which words were next. Or sometimes the people in the band would be like, let's go back to this and let's repeat that verse one more time. And I'd be like, which one? I really don't know what happened. There's just a time block in my mind. And before you know it, now we're at 2018, the very beginning of my sophomore year. It's September. I get scheduled. So I'm scheduled. So it's about to start. I walk in the back, and the main leader lady, whatever, she was like, oh, make sure you get here earlier next time. So we're not gonna have you back here tonight. And I was like, oh, okay. So I can't remember if this happened before or after this time when she was like, oh, forget it, never mind. But she came up to me and she was like, hey, I was wondering, did you still want to run computer? And I was like, yeah, of course. You know, like, I still wanted to do it at that point. I literally didn't want to do it anymore. I don't know why. Once it got to then, I suddenly wanted to do it again. I don't know what my problem was. Just ignore that, okay? Even though it had been a while and I started to get annoyed with it, I was like, okay, yeah, I'll get back into it. Also, I was having some like problems with some of the people there, so it was kind of nice to be away from them. And when I say like problems, it was just hard to talk to them because they were part of these groups that I was not a part of. So anyhow, going back to the day where I didn't end up doing it, after everything had ended, she came up to me and she was like, okay, show up at this time or whatever to set up. And I was like, okay, I'll be there then. So that next Sunday comes and I get there and she was like, oh, okay, do you remember how to do this? I'm like, no. I'm like, listen, I only did this like the first few times, and that was, 2.5, almost 3 years ago. I don't know what I'm doing. So she kind of like was showing me stuff, but like I sensed that she was annoyed. So I was like, oh, this is fun. And then at one point she was gone for like 10 minutes talking to the other youth leaders. I like heard some of their conversations. I don't remember what it was about, but they were just being immature. I'll put it that way. So I got out of there and I walked away and I went and started talking to my friend because I was like, this is stupid. Why am I doing this? So when I came back into there around the time that I usually would to, start doing stuff for the rest of the night, she was like, hey, I'm gonna ask you to like go sit out there again tonight. She was like, when you're here, you need to be committed. So at that time, I was only 15 years old. So I was like, okay, I'm 15, I don't know what I'm doing, and you're running around away from me, and you're gonna be like, you need to be committed to me. Listen, I'm just volunteering. I am a teenager. I am a sophomore in high school. Like, this isn't my responsibility. Like, yeah, it was, but I wasn't the one who chose not to know anything. I wasn't the one who decided to stop coming in early. Like, you told me that. I didn't decide that on my own, and that's why I had no idea what was going on. So please, do not come to me like, you need to be committed. I was. There were some kids in that youth group who were so annoying, so obnoxious, and they'd still volunteer and do stuff. I was nothing but nice. I was never rude. I was always nice. I was just genuinely confused. And at that moment, I just didn't feel like dealing with other people's crap. So I walked away. Like, that's all there is to it. Moving on, another thing that I could not stand was the youth group couples, the kids in youth group who were dating, especially when we were in middle school. And it happened even in high school. It annoyed me. A big number of my friends did date. I never did. I didn't get my first boyfriend until I was 18 years old. But obviously that sort of created some pressure on me a little bit. So when I was in 7th grade, I did like one of the guys in youth group. So I didn't really explain this, but I actually forced myself to like this kid because all my friends were talking about their crushes, and they're like, oh, why don't you have one? So I thought this kid was kind of cute, so I just decided that, and then they kept talking about him all the time, and then somehow I ended up catching feelings, but yeah, it was really forced. But one of the times that I had attempted to, start a conversation with them, he called me ugly. So after that, I kind of just gave up on that. There was another guy that I liked in middle school, but he didn't go to that youth group. And by the end of my freshman year of high school, I had absolutely no interest in dating at all. Like, I genuinely did not care. But, sometimes I would sit with my friends and they would have their boyfriends with them. So it was just awkward. I actually remember this one time when it was friend and boyfriend holding hands, friend and boyfriend holding hands, me in the middle holding hands with both friend. And it just got really annoying because sometimes you just wanted to talk to your friends or hang out with your friends, but they had to be attached to this guy. And a lot of these kids in this youth group, they weren't allowed to date until they were a certain age or whatever. So the only time they could really hang out with like their boyfriends and girlfriends was at youth group. So they would act like they were on a date when they were at youth. And it was really annoying. And I just didn't want to be like that. Obviously, if I wanted to start dating, my parents wouldn't have had a problem with that, so I wouldn't have done that, but just seeing enough of that just shooed me away from it. I was like, no, please. So, of course, people give you crap for it sometimes, or they constantly ask you, who do you like? Or they're like, are you a lesbian? Like, why haven't you had a boyfriend? Leave me alone. I just don't want to date. I am in high school. I am a freshman in high school. I don't want to date. I'm in 8th grade, whatever, however old I was. I just wanted to be my own person, okay? And I was also obsessing over boy bands hardcore at that time, so if those weren't the guys I was getting, I wasn't having anybody at all. And the next thing is the games in youth group. I had one friend who never played any of the games with me. If you're that person and you happen to be watching this, I love you, thank you. During the games, I would have rather been talking to my friends than, doing whatever they were doing. And let me tell you, some of these games, they were really weird, in my opinion. A lot of these games got very touchy. I don't know how to explain it, but it was just so weird how, you're in this youth group and they're always talking about, staying pure and all that. And then they play this game and they're like, okay, everybody, touch everyone. In my perception, it was just weird. Maybe I'm reading too far into it, but yeah. So for me, the games are either way too oddly physical or completely boring. So I stayed out of it, except for occasionally. There's this one thing that we would do where it was like small games, one after another, and someone would have the flag. It'd be like one person on the team completes one thing and does it to the other person. I love that. That was one of the games that I actually did like. But most of the other stuff, I did not. In fact, there was a whole month and a half dedicated to playing games and being split onto teams, which I hated because most of the time when they did this, it was every September to October, I would always be separated from my friends. We would look at the team list and they would just split everybody up. It's like they did it on purpose. I'm telling you, I really think they did. So I remember actually during the 1 year of this, me and my friend, because they separated the different rows, but she sat on the end of hers on her team and I sat on the end of mine, just because we wanted to be with each other because we were friends, not in this random group. So during those things, I was always alone. I was always standing by myself and, looking across the room for my friends on the other teams like, hey, I wish I was with you right now. So there was this one night in particular that I will never forget because it was just so weird. So it was during worship. Okay, but usually during worship, we'd all go up towards the front, but they wanted us to just stay in our spots and they just had music quiet in the background. And they're like, hey, do whatever you want with this time. You can, read your Bible or just pray or I don't know. They would do this once in a while. So, I'm sitting there in the back row by myself across from my friend, and I see one of the youth leaders. She was a new youth leader at the time. She'd only been there a few weeks, and she keeps looking over at me like, please don't think I'm some charity case or something. Everything is fine. I'm just not with my friends, so I'm just kind of vibing here by myself. But then she starts walking over to me. Then she comes and she sits down next to me, and she's like, can I pray for you? And I'm like, sure. And in my head, I was just thinking, oh no, what's going on next? And obviously I was looking over at her this way, but my friend sitting over there, I could just sense that she was like looking at me, and she was like, can I put my hand on your shoulder? And I was like, sure. So obviously this lady doesn't know me. She's a new youth leader. She's probably just making assumptions about me. How long could she go on for? Yeah, I'm telling you, this lady prayed for 10 minutes and just kept repeating the same things over and over again. And then by the time she was almost done, like, that's when the youth pastor said that everybody could start exiting and leaving if they wanted to. So everybody was like walking out and she's still going. And I look at her, she has her like eyes closed and she's praying. I'm like, oh no. And in my head, I was thinking, oh God, please just let me out of here on time. And then my friend got up and she walks by and she looks at me and I'm just like looking at her because I was confused. And then after, you know, she finished praying and stuff and I finally walked out, I was like, yeah, I don't know why that happened. And I basically gave her like an overview of, you know, her coming to talk to me and all that. And yeah, that was a really uncomfortable experience. That was in my sophomore year when that happened. But when I was in like 6th or 7th grade, I remember that there was this youth group from West Virginia that came up. Very odd, specific memory. And they were all standing at the front. They're like, okay, everybody, you can get out and, you know, just stand in a row and have each of them pray for you. And I sat there. I was the only person in the whole youth group. At least I think I was. I didn't see anybody else. But I was the only one who did not get up because I didn't want to. So yeah, of course, people were staring at me and I was like, oh well. There was somebody there who looked over at me and she's like, are you okay? Because I was still sitting there and I was like, yeah. It just wasn't my environment. It wasn't what I was used to. So I was just like, no. Another thing that they would do is they would have certain students who, you know, did like announcements and other things. And they would have opportunities to just do other stuff. I don't know how to really explain it, but basically they would act like they were the best people in the world and that they were so great and that they did all these things. But I knew a lot about what some of these kids were doing in their free time, and it was not good stuff. One of the things that just annoyed me is that they were praising and putting these people up on a pedestal for doing stuff when I knew that they really weren't a good person. Okay, maybe not that they were a bad person, but they made bad choices often. Jesus forgives, okay? We're not gonna stand there and judge everyone for it. But it's just annoying when you've done nothing but good, or you've just done nothing, I guess, in my case. I don't know what good I ever did there. Ooh, fuzzy. And people judge you and act different towards you. But then when there's this person, you know they're out there and just overall not good things. And then they act like they're your example or like they should be your role model. Like, oh, you're in 6th grade. Look at this freshman right here. Like, they're so great. You should look up to them. But anyhow, that is pretty much all of my youth group stories and stuff. Comment down below if you've had any experiences like this too, and I will see you all next time. Be sure to like, subscribe, and yeah, bye.